All right, so it's been about a month since I completed this game, which is crazy to believe, but I thought it deserved some sort of review, honestly. It's not a terrible installment, but I could definitely see why a lot of people do not like it. Trust me, if you were to bring it up, a lot of people kind of just saying some bad things about it, or say they never played it, or they say they played the vanilla version of the game, the original release, which was not very an ideal Ninja Gaiden game. It was just something different, but they're trying something different. So I'm gonna dive into this and give you a little brief summary. If this helps, that's cool. If it doesn't, that's it's also cool. But glad to know you guys clicked on the video. That's great and all. Just FYI, I am doing this straight off the dome. I didn't write anything down because I remember the majority of it. I do remember the cons and the pros for the most part because I did spend at least 20, 30 hours playing this game, even sometimes off screen as well, like this challenge mode here. So yeah, sit back, enjoy your snacks, and I'm going to nerd out on this very extremely bloody, gory game. First things first, this game looks pretty damn good. Is the rain details are okay. Mind you, this is the first stage. Fire details is kind of all over the place. You'll see that in like multiple stages. The way the characters look, they look just like they came. They look like they just came from Dead or Alive. So nothing too crazy about that. No ray tracing or nothing crazy like that. So very basic, but still looks pretty damn good for his age. Now, the combat in this game is pretty damn fun, in all honesty. You do stay on the ground for the most part. Juggling enemies is not really as crazy as it can be in any other games like God of War or even Devil May Cry itself. But you can launch them in the air. You got little, what, two, three combos to do there. Like I said, you mostly stay on the ground. This ninja these ninjas have cement shoes. They, which is crazy because you would think they would be doing some crazy stuff. Granted, you do maneuver a lot, as in wall running, running up the walls, or just simply climbing them. And you can jump off enemies' heads, which I don't showcase a lot in these clips, but it is a thing. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of air potential, which is not necessarily bad because games like hack and slashes, they all have their own identity. So I like for them to be different. Even games like Ghost Rider on the PS2, it played something like Devil May Cry and God of War, but it still had its own spin to it, which was great. I never got to finish it, so I can't say too much about it, but it was still great. You know, that's the whole point of getting video games as a whole. It's always supposed to have its own identity, even if it is the same genre. But back to it, this game can get very repetitive. It can get very mashing at sometimes. You will find yourself pressing square, square, triangle a lot, or square, 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 triangle. And triangle is really just your strong attack button. And I am speaking for PlayStation because I am playing on PS5. Of course, one of the cool things about Ninja Gaiden is that you can change weapons. You don't have to stick to one weapon. You can have a variety, but that's only accustomed to Ryu. The other girls that you play as, because there's always going to be a girl that you play as, they only stick to one weapon, one Nimpo, which is fine because people like Ayane can make do with her bomb kunais, or Kasumi can teleport to people with certain attacks. They all have their special thing, which makes them slightly different from Ryu. Even Momiji gets a double jump, which is I haven't made use for it, but I'm pretty sure someone else has made use for it. I don't know. I'm not that much into the community to really know. But going back to it, the weapons do make the game a hell lot more fun. Starting off with the katana, the dragon sword. It's very simple to use. It is the Shotokan of the variety your arsenal. Switching to something like the Falcon Talons here is fast and quick and easy, or the bow staff or the lunar staff. I'm sorry, is powerful, has a decent range. It can attack most enemies that's in your area, so it can clear a lot of ground in an instant. Things like the scythe decapitate limbs very easily. They all have their special things, even though they all map to a certain button. They'll never be forever tricky. It's nothing like hold square and you do this, or press mash square and you do that. It's all pretty. like I said, it becomes brain dead really after a while. They did not bring back the great sword, so that's gone. They no longer have the flail or the nunchucks, which is sad. No more wooden sword. They kind of took away a few, and it's including Tonfers. Tonfers is kind of one of my favorites, but you know, it is what it is. So for what they have here, I feel like it works out. I feel like you're able to use these and still have a ball with them. You get the talents pretty easy, or pretty early on in the game, actually, what I meant to say, which makes it, more enjoyable. And eventually, like later on, you will get the scythe. You all collectively get it from either your bird or from collecting scarabs that's hidden across the game. Using other weapons besides the dragon sword does make the game feel more stylish and more fun to play. I could definitely say the talons will tear through people, and both the lunar staff will destroy people as well. You do get a chain and sickle. I believe it's called the Kusori Gama. One of my personal favorites, just because if you played the second game, I don't know, that thing was just overpowered. It was very strong, and it's still pretty strong in this game as well. They might even toned it down, who knows? But I had when I finally got the training sickle, I was on level one with it, of course. It wasn't upgraded, and I was still just destroying anything that came towards me. Now, granted, upgrading your weapons doesn't necessarily make it stronger, it doesn't give it more reach, or it doesn't give you more defense. You don't get crazy RPG elements like that. Is you just unlock more of the skill list, the combo list, and that's really about as far as it goes. Which isn't terrible, but the one thing I can say, I don't really too much like that, just because it can become a little bit annoying. Knowing that you had to upgrade just so you could finish your heavy attack combo. So starting off, when you first get a weapon, and it's on level one, you press triangle, and that's it. Try to press it again, you get nothing else. But if you upgrade it, you get a second hit to that triangle attack or that heavy attack, and it can be a little off-putting, which personally I didn't really like. Giving access to all the moves just makes it stronger, but I guess they didn't want to balance it that way. They want to keep it as non RPG as possible, which I guess I understand, but at the same time, it can come off as very frustrating. Personally, I wish you just don't do it again. That is, of course, they do make another one, but that's we'll find out eventually, right? So going back to it, this challenge mode is actually pretty fun because it just sends you like a wave of enemies. Which, granted, I feel like the challenge mode is better than doing anything else. I feel like the challenge modes are actually better than the stages themselves because you do practically do this already. You're going to fight a bunch of wave of enemies, and some of them are the same. Some of them will have armor, so you will have to maybe use heavy attacks or just straight up counter them to get through it. Hell, just use your Ninpo if you really wanted to, because they do become a pain after a while. Speaking of Ninpo, you don't get a crazy amount in this game. If anything, the fact that you play multiple characters gives you more options to Ninpo, but for the most part, being Ryu, you only get a total of four, and the fourth one you have to unlock, which is not even available to the end of the game. But you get the fire, you get the wind, and you get the piercing void Ninpo, and they all have their different ways of being used. The fire is probably the most standard one to use. It locks on to enemies, and it gives your health back because there's no more orbs in this game, unfortunately. So how do you get your Ninpo back? Of course, you just attack enemies and you execute them and whatever, and it just slowly gains back. It's right under your health, so it's not too hard to see. But depending on which Ninpo you are using, it would be a shorter gauge. So for Ryu, if you're using the Wind Ninpo, the gauge is a lot shorter than Fire, and then of course the Piercing Void, the gauge is shorter than both the other two, but you know you don't really get that much health back when you land the attack, and you also don't really do a ton when you constantly use it like that. So it all depends on your play style, which I guess gives you some sort of variety, but it still comes out to be a little flat if you ask me. Now, as you can see here, when you do these challenges, sometimes you will fight old bosses from the older games. Like this guy, I believe he's from the first Ninja Gaiden. I can't remember his name, but yeah, you fight him, and he wasn't much of a challenge in the first one, if you ask me, if I remember correctly. First one is a bit more challenging as a whole, but he's actually pretty fun to fight. He's very slow, not super hard to kill. I barely make it here just simply because, well, Ayane feels so different compared to Ryu, and that's just my excuse. I'm sticking to it. But regardless, I think that's pretty cool. That is actually a very nice touch because the bosses in this game, oh my god, you will fight the same bosses over and over and over, and most of them would be armored vehicles. I don't know why they decided to just jam pack this game with armored vehicles. You will see it in my playthrough as well, where I'm just fed up. I fought at least four, five helicopters, all with arrows, mind you. Eventually, it led to a QTE where I'm like driving my dragon sword through it and cutting it wide open, things like that. It's not necessarily like Metal Gear Revengeance where something happens and next thing you know you're just like really up close and personal, destroying it. These ninjas were not meant to fight these armored vehicles. I promise you that. All you do is just shoot arrows, and it is so lame in my opinion because the second game has some decent bosses. Other than that, the bosses were, oh shit, I died. Wow. Unfortunately, I do not have the footage to show it. It is in my playthrough. You do fight another boss who's like a fencer. He wears red. He's like an alchemist and something like that. He is a challenge at first, but once you learn his pattern, he's not too difficult to go against. But you fight him at least 4 or 5 times. That's including before the final boss as well. It gets this game gets very repetitive extremely quick. I'm surprised I didn't even mention that throughout my playthrough, but yeah, I was kind of just like, man, when did this game end at some point? Because I really am just slashing the same enemies over and over and over. But famous last words because eventually you do come across different enemies. You do come across fiends. Fiends were from, well, every other Ninja Gaiden game, and you don't really see a great amount of them in this game, mostly until towards the end. And I promise you, they kind of came out of nowhere. You will come across your first fiend in a museum. The fiends are practically like demons, so you come across them just randomly. They just kind of popped up, and I was like, "Oh, what the hell's going on?" And yeah, there's just no explanation to it necessarily. I guess it's just you just assume of how to get there, which is odd in my book because why would I just sit here and just and guess? But you know, whatever. Most hack and slash games don't really have that great of stories anyway, especially this one in particular. I don't want to bash it too much, but it was just so random when it happened. Well, besides that, you will come across some genetically modified or made human beings. Like there's some experiments that come out of a lab, and some of them have they're just annoying to fight because one is just a big, strong gorilla Hulk-like thing that you constantly fight over and over, and they block the majority of your attacks. They can tank through the majority of your attacks. Another one's like a snake with two snake-like arms that shoot projectiles, and it can poison you and whatnot, or just straight up dodge you. So, man, like the variety of these enemies are not something to write home about. You will quickly get irritated. At least I quickly got irritated the moment you start fighting them. But it is what it is. Not every hack and slash game is going to have a good variety of enemies. There's always going to be something either you don't want to fight, you're tired of fighting, or you just don't want to fight. It happens, right? Uh, and that's pretty much about it. There's nothing else really too much to this game. When you get towards the end, if you feel like me, I was just ready to close it up. I was kind of just done. The story, like I said, wasn't the greatest. Music is not really as memorable, but then I can't really go back and say the other two games had memorable music. If you're talking about NES and SNES, maybe, yeah, they probably had a few tracks that I can remember, especially things like the first stage of, I believe it was Ninja Gaiden 1. Yeah, it was the first Ninja Gaiden on NES. So there's that. And I don't have too much to say on the stages as well. Actually, I'm about to fight that alchemist right here. Yeah. He was a pain in my ass for quite some time. He challenges you for real, for real. I don't have footage on the armored vehicle fight, and quite honestly, I don't want to show you guys my pain of fighting one of those spider tanks because you will fight at least four more of those spider tanks when you get close to the end. I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up at all. It was so frustrating, especially in a game where, yeah, you have some acrobatic ability and you can wall run and stuff like that. But honestly, moving around in this game, sometimes you feel like a slug. I'm gonna say that right the heck now. Now, one thing I did forget to mention from the majority of me talking is the still on bone mechanic within this game, which is a pretty cool mechanic in my opinion. It's a way of punishing foes who's going in for a heavy attack. So pretty much what it is when your enemy will throw out a heavy attack and it look like it's unblockable, or it will be unblockable. They have like this red aura around them. So if you either dodge it, then counter with your heavy attack, or whatnot, you will punish them. See what I just did there? Yeah, that's the still on bone, which is actually, like I said, it kills them in one hit, so you don't have to worry about them getting back up. They are completely gone. It's whiff punishing, if you will, if you know your fighting game terms. Uh, it is, like I said, neat mechanic. It clears ground extremely quick, along with the ultimate technique. Those things are easy to rely on, and probably one of the best mechanics this game has ever featured. Let's be honest, it doesn't really have too much going. Now, to go back to what I said before about hack and slash games having puzzles in them, it's not necessarily mandatory. It's not needed, but it kind of helps you break away from the constant, well, hacking and slashing. You can't always just be on your toes and be aware of your surroundings and think of combos and try to be stylish. It sounds very exhausting after a while. So puzzles, they help keep the game interesting, but I could definitely tell you right now, not only this is not necessarily my favorite Devil May Cry game, but this is also not one of my favorite puzzles of all time. And if you know, you know. Let me just go ahead and show you exactly of why I absolutely freaking hate this puzzle with a burning passion. So, mind you, this is actually the second time that you'll be doing this puzzle within this game. And all you practically do is roll this dice and you move your statues, kind of like a party board game, right? I'm all for party board games. I played Mario Party, I played Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep on the PSP. But when I tell you this has to be the most frustrating board like game that I've ever played, it is the most bored, frustrating party game that I ever played. I know I just mixed up my words, but yeah, it's annoying because if you don't get the right spot, then you practically just be going around in a circle. Mind you, either you land on the purple that'll lead you to the next floor, or you land on the yellow space and it'll just put you on the purple spot. So that's cool, but for the most part, luck is not on your side. Now, I don't know if speedrunners found a way to get around it, but for the most part, you have to do this. See how it kind of just went around it like that? So, bam. Guess what I got to do? Roll the dice again. There was a moment. Of course, I didn't record it because I wasn't doing that at the time. Where I was just stuck here for like damn near 10 minutes because I kept rolling past the spaces that was needed. Absolutely frustrating. I'm glad it didn't bring this back. This is Devil May Cry 4, by the way. This did not come back in Devil May Cry 5. Thank you, sweet, merciful Jesus. I cannot stress that enough. On top of that, if you really want to get frustrated, someone like me, play this on your iPhone. Yeah, it's still available. You will have to play this very same stage once more, but twice again. So not only will you be playing this twice, but you'll be playing it on your iPhone twice as well, or once. Maybe it's just once. You know what? It's been a while, but yeah. I don't know who thought of this, but I hate them. I'm just gonna say that right now. And also to extend my point just a little further, I had to bring up this footage as well. This game sort of have puzzles in it, and sometimes it don't. Sometimes you will have to find a key in a different room, and sometimes you don't. You kind of just go straight through. But I think that's kind of like the fun of this game. I would say this one, this stage in particular, isn't that bad. You kind of just either you go through this and you go through this little obstacle course, just avoiding spikes, and the next one will just be you find a bunch of wave of enemies while you gotta destroy a certain object so you can even hit them. In the last room that I just try to avoid of all costs because I never remember the order, uh, you just go through a certain door with a number on it, and if you go through the wrong one, you got to fight a wave of enemies. Now, is that fun? No, not necessarily, but it is something. You know, either you're gonna remember which door you're gonna go through, or you're gonna write it down somewhere, or it kind of just makes you even more engaged into the game as well. So it's like I said, it's not necessarily mandatory, no, but it does give some sort of variety to the game. You know, when you play Grand Theft Auto, do you really just shoot at people all day, or do you drive? Do you drive and shoot, or do you go shopping? You know, the variety is nice. You don't just simply steal cars in Grand Theft Auto, even though it's called Grand Theft Auto. So it's just, yeah, it's just something of that matter. It helps feels like the game is actually something instead of you just doing the same thing over and over and over and over. That makes you lose brain cells. No, I'm not sure if that's actually true or not, but that's how I felt when I was playing Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge for really like the second time. So just to wrap this video up, this game isn't necessarily perfect and it's not necessarily god awful. And I know this might be a controversial take, but is my opinion. Is so the thing is, I actually like this more than I like Devil May Cry 4, and it's mostly because I don't like Dante in Devil May Cry 4, and that's majority of the reason. Nero feels kind of flat, but then everyone else still plays exceptionally well. This game, there's no bad character necessarily, sorry. Momiji can be listed as a bad character if you wanted to, but for the most part, I think everyone else plays just fine. Different weapons I mean, every weapon has its own personality. Every nimpo is used for different situations. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's not necessarily terribly flawed like how some games can be. Hell, and this is really going off topic. I would play this over God of War Ascension. Yeah, when I first played that game, personally did not like it. So it is what it is. But that's it. That's all I'm gonna say without saying too much and spoiling things. If you like the video, please leave a like. It'll make a great big help. Please subscribe as well because it really does help build the channel. I will try to make more videos like these as I did complete DMC3 with Virgil, Transformers, and God of War. So you will be hearing me more around. Thank you for watching and have yourself a fantastic day.